The night before my wedding, I found 3 framed photographs of me and my fiancé leaning beside the kitchen trash. The smallest frame had been crushed under a man's shoe. Our faces were split beneath the broken glass. When I asked the butler what had happened, he looked me directly in the eye and said, "Mr. Hawthorne ordered them removed." My fiancé had thrown away our memories because his childhood friend called them an eyesore. I did not scream. I did not run upstairs. I did not ask him to explain. I walked outside, sat in my car, and cancelled a 300-guest wedding before he even realized I had left the house. Hello. My name is Evelyn Mercer, and for almost 4 years, I believed I was about to marry a man who loved me. His name was Adrian Hawthorne. The Hawthornes were the kind of family whose last name appeared on hospital wings, university buildings, and brass plaques inside museums. Their money was old, their manners were polished, and their cruelty usually arrived with a smile. I met Adrian at an architecture fundraiser in Boston. I was 31, working as a commercial interior designer, and trying to turn my small studio into something more than a rented room with 2 desks and a printer that jammed every afternoon. Adrian was charming in a quiet, controlled way. He remembered names. He noticed when my glass was empty. He asked questions and listened closely enough to make me feel important. At least, that was what I thought he was doing. 3 months after we met, he introduced me to his mother, Beatrice Hawthorne. She looked at my navy dress, my inexpensive shoes, and the silver bracelet my late father had given me. Then she smiled. "How refreshingly simple," she said. I did not understand at the time that simple was not a compliment in the Hawthorne family. It meant replaceable. Over the next 3 years, Adrian slowly folded me into his world. He hired my studio to redesign 2 rooms in the family estate, then 4 rooms, then the guest house. I spent hundreds of hours selecting stone, restoring old woodwork, and balancing Beatrice's impossible requests. She rejected fabrics after approving them. She changed paint colors after the walls were finished. She asked me to make a library look warmer, then complained that the lighting made the antiques look common. Whenever I became frustrated, Adrian would touch my shoulder and say, "She is difficult with everyone, don't take it personally." So I did not. That sentence became the lock on every door I should have opened. Don't take it personally. When his mother criticized my accent, I did not take it personally. When she introduced me as Adrian's decorator instead of his fiancé, I did not take it personally. When she suggested that I leave my own engagement dinner early because the Hawthorne men needed to discuss business, I did not take it personally. And when Adrian's childhood friend, Claire Beaumont, returned from Paris 6 days before our wedding, I tried not to take that personally either. Claire was tall, elegant, and beautiful in a way that looked expensive. She had grown up 3 houses away from Adrian. Their parents vacationed together. They attended the same schools. There were photographs of them at summer camps, charity balls, and ski lodges. Beatrice adored her. The first evening Claire arrived, I entered the drawing room and found her sitting in my usual chair beside Adrian. Her hand rested on his arm. Neither of them moved when they saw me. Claire smiled. "Evelyn, I have heard so much about your wedding." "Not our wedding, your wedding." I noticed the difference. Adrian did not. Or he pretended not to. The following day, Claire criticized the flowers. The day after that, she criticized the table settings. Then she said the photographs of Adrian and me around the estate felt too sentimental, and made the house look like a bridal showroom. I laughed because I assumed no reasonable person would take that complaint seriously. I was wrong. At 10:42 on the night before the wedding, I returned to the Hawthorne estate because I had forgotten the earrings I planned to wear. The service corridor was quiet. Most of the staff had gone home, and the rest were preparing breakfast trays for the wedding party. A utility room door stood half open. Light from the hallway fell across 3 wooden frames. One had held our engagement portrait. One had held a photograph from our first trip to Maine. The smallest had stood on Adrian's bedside table. They were stacked beside 2 bags of garbage. A dark shoe print crossed the smallest frame. The glass was broken over my mouth. For several seconds, I could not breathe. Then Mr. Collins, the Hawthorne family's butler, appeared behind me. He had worked for the family for 23 years. He was a careful man who spoke as though every sentence had been reviewed by a lawyer. "Miss Mercer," he said. I pointed toward the frames. "Why are those here?" His eyes moved toward the broken glass. "Miss Beaumont found them unsuitable for the rooms." I waited. "Did Claire ask you to remove them?" "No, ma'am." "Who did?" He hesitated for only half a second. "Mr. Hawthorne." The corridor became very still. "Adrian ordered you to throw away our photographs. He instructed the staff to remove them before breakfast." "Why?" I was not given a reason. Where is he? In the upstairs study. With Claire? Yes, ma'am. I looked toward the main staircase. I imagined walking up 3 floors. I imagined opening the study door. I imagined demanding an explanation while Claire watched me fall apart. Then I remembered something my father once told me. When someone shows you the position they have chosen for you, do not argue about the view. Leave the room. I placed the earrings I had come to collect back on the hallway table. Then I walked out of the house. My car was parked near the service entrance, far from Adrian's black sedan and Beatrice's silver Bentley. The night air was cold enough to sting my lungs. I sat behind the wheel and opened the wedding group chat. There were 42 people in it: our families, the wedding party, the planner, the hotel manager, and several members of the Hawthorne staff. My fingers hovered above the screen. I had planned that wedding for 11 months. 300 guests were arriving. The flowers had been delivered. The cake was finished. The ballroom had been decorated. A string quartet was already staying at the hotel. Canceling would create chaos, but marrying Adrian would create a lifetime of it. I typed, "Tomorrow's wedding is cancelled. This decision is final. Guests will receive updated information regarding travel and hotel arrangements." I apologize for the late notice. I pressed send. For 3 seconds, nothing happened, then the screen exploded. Adrian called first. I declined. Beatrice called next. I declined. My sister called. I answered. "Evelyn," she whispered. "What happened?" "I will tell you tomorrow. Right now, I need you to trust me." "Are you safe?" "Yes." "Then I trust you." That was the first moment my eyes filled with tears. Not because I was leaving Adrian. Because someone had asked whether I was safe, instead of asking what I had done to the Hawthorns. I called the wedding planner. Her voice was cheerful when she answered. "Everything is ready. You should be sleeping. The wedding is cancelled." Silence. Then she said, "Do you need help?" It was such a simple question. I almost broke. "Yes," I said. "Cancel the ceremony. Stop all remaining deliveries. Donate the prepared food if the hotel allows it. Pay every worker for the hours they were promised." "What about the costs?" "I will handle my share." "Evelyn, Adrian's family controls the main accounts." "I know." That was when I realized canceling the wedding was only the beginning. Adrian controlled the wedding accounts. His family controlled the venue contract. And for the last year they had also been negotiating a business deal using my designs. A deal worth far more than any wedding. I ended the call and drove toward downtown Boston. Adrian continued calling. Then a message appeared. "What is wrong with you?" Claire said one stupid thing. I moved the pictures so she would stop complaining. "Come back before you embarrass both of us." I read it twice. He did not apologize. He did not ask where I was. He was worried about embarrassment. Then another message came. "You are overreacting." And another. "My mother is furious." Then Claire wrote to me. "Please don't turn a small decorating decision into a public disaster. Adrian loves you. Everyone knows that." I stared at her message. Everyone knew Adrian loved me. Except Adrian, apparently. I checked into a small hotel under my middle name. In the room, I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my laptop. I had not brought a wedding dress. I had not brought clothes. I had not even brought a toothbrush. But I had brought my computer, and on that computer were copies of every contract I had signed with the Hawthorne Development Group. At 1:15 in the morning, while Adrian's family tried to force me back to the estate, I began reading. By 2 o'clock, I found the first lie. By 3, I found the second. By 4, I understood why Claire had returned from Paris. And by sunrise, I knew the broken photographs were not the real betrayal. They were only the warning. The project was called Harbor Crown. It was a luxury waterfront development planned for a neglected industrial district outside Boston. Adrian's father had spent 5 years acquiring the land through different companies. Adrian was supposed to lead the final phase and prove that he could eventually take control of the family business. The project needed something memorable. My design studio created it. I developed the central concept: 5 connected buildings arranged around a public glass atrium shaped like an opening flower. The design allowed sunlight into the lower levels while protecting the space from harsh winter winds. Adrian loved it. His father loved it. Investors loved it. For 18 months, my team prepared plans, visual studies, material research, and presentation documents. But every time I asked when the final design agreement would be signed, Adrian told me the lawyers were still reviewing it. After the wedding, he kept saying, "Once we are married, all of this paperwork will be unnecessary. We will be building our future together." I believed him. That night in the hotel, I opened the latest contract draft. The first pages looked normal. Then I reached the intellectual property section. My name had been removed. Mercer Design Studio had been replaced by Beaumont Atelier International, Claire's company. I read the paragraph again. All architectural concepts, interior systems, renderings, branding elements, and presentation materials were listed as original work produced under Claire's supervision. My designs were about to become hers. I searched my email. 3 weeks earlier, Adrienne's assistant had asked me to send the final high-resolution files for wedding week investor preparations. I had sent them. I checked the file activity. Someone had downloaded everything to a server owned by Beaumont Atelier. My hands became cold. Claire had not returned for the wedding. She had returned for the signing. I called Daniel Price, an attorney who had helped me create my studio years earlier. It was 5:30 in the morning. He answered on the fourth ring. Evelyn, I need you to listen carefully. I canceled my wedding. I think my fiancé is transferring my designs to another company. There was a pause. Do you have proof? I have contract drafts and server records. Do not send anything from your normal email. Create a new address. Upload copies. Do not edit the original files. I also have design registrations. All of them. Most. The early concept sketches were registered under my studio. Later revisions were stored on the Hawthorne server. Did your contract assign ownership? The consulting agreement says ownership transfers only after full payment and final written acceptance. Have they paid in full? No. Then the rights may still be yours. May. That word was not enough. What do I do? First, preserve evidence. Second, revoke any access permissions you legally control. Third, do not speak to Adrienne without me. I looked at the clock. My wedding ceremony was supposed to begin in 6 hours. Instead, I spent the morning building a legal file against the man I had planned to marry. At 7, my sister Natalie arrived at the hotel with coffee, clothes, and a face full of questions. She hugged me before speaking. Then she saw the documents spread across the bed. What is all this? I showed her the contract. She read the first page, then the ownership clause. Her expression changed. They were stealing from you. They were preparing to. Does Adrian know? He approved the transfer request. Natalie sat down slowly. This is not about photographs. No. The photographs were meant to show Claire that she could control him. Less. And the wedding was meant to make it harder for you to fight. I looked at her. She had understood the part I had not yet allowed myself to say. If I married Adrian, the Hawthorns would argue that my work had become part of a shared marital enterprise. They would use family pressure, money, and reputation to bury the ownership dispute. Claire would receive public credit. Adrian would receive the project. And I would be told that a good wife did not embarrass her husband over business. At 8:15, Daniel called back. I reviewed the documents. You have a strong claim, but there is a problem. What problem? The investor presentation is scheduled for Monday. That is 3 days away. They plan to present your designs under Claire's name. Once investors see the work and the media receives the images, correcting the public record becomes much harder. What can we do? We can send a cease and desist notice today. We can also notify the project's financing partners that ownership is disputed. Natalie leaned closer to the phone. Will that stop the project? It could delay it, possibly freeze it. I thought about the Hawthorne ballroom, where 300 people were supposed to watch me promise my life to Adrian. Then I imagined another room on Monday, where investors would watch Claire present my work. Send it, I said. Daniel did not hesitate. Are you sure? This will become public inside their business circle. They made my work public when they put her name on it. At 9, Adrian's mother arrived at the hotel. I did not know how she found me. Beatrice entered the lobby wearing a cream coat and dark glasses. 2 family assistants followed her. I stayed near the reception desk, where cameras could see us. She stopped in front of me. Come upstairs, she said. No. Her mouth tightened. You have humiliated my son in front of hundreds of people. Your son removed our photographs to please another woman. Claire is family. And what was I? You were about to become family, until you behaved like this. There it was, almost family. After 4 years, after redesigning their homes, after giving Adrian my work, after changing myself to fit their rooms, I was still standing outside the door. Beatrice lowered her voice. You will return to the estate. The ceremony will be delayed until the afternoon. We will tell everyone you became ill. The wedding is cancelled. You are emotional. No, I was emotional when I believed Adrian loved me. Now I am informed. She removed her glasses. Her eyes were sharp. What does that mean? It means your lawyers will receive a notice this morning regarding Harbor Crown. For the first time, her expression changed. Only slightly. But I saw it. She knew. You have no authority over that project. I have authority over my work. Your work was produced for Hawthorne Development. Then your lawyers can explain why Claire's company is listed as the creator. The assistants behind her became very still. Beatrice stepped closer. You are making a serious mistake. No, I almost made a serious mistake. It was scheduled for 11 o'clock. I walked away before she could answer. At 10:30, the cease and desist notice was delivered. At 11, the time I should have been walking down the aisle, Daniel sent formal ownership warnings to the primary lender, 2 investors, the project insurer, and the city development office. At 11:12, Adrian finally stopped calling. At 11:20, his father called me for the first time in 4 years. I did not answer. At noon, the hotel donated the prepared meals to 3 shelters and a community food program. The flowers were divided among 2 hospitals and a nursing home. I paid the musicians, servers, drivers, and temporary staff from my own emergency account. The wedding cost me nearly $60,000 in penalties and lost deposits. It was the most expensive decision I had ever made. It was also the first expensive decision I made entirely for myself. That afternoon, Daniel received a response from the Hawthorne legal team. They denied everything. They claimed Claire's name had been added only as an international branding consultant. They claimed my designs were preliminary. They claimed Adrian had full permission to use the files. Then they made an offer. $200,000 in exchange for signing away all claims to Harbor Crown and agreeing not to discuss the cancelled wedding publicly. Natalie read the offer over my shoulder. They think you can be purchased. No, I said. They think they already purchased me. This is just the receipt. I rejected it. An hour later, Adrian appeared outside the hotel. He stood in the rain without an umbrella. For one dangerous second, he looked like the man I had loved. Tired, pale, human. I met him in the lobby with Natalie and Daniel beside me. He looked at them. Can we speak privately? No. His jaw tightened. Evelyn, this has gone too far. You ordered our photographs thrown away. I ordered them moved. One was crushed. I did not tell anyone to break it. That is your defense. Claire was upset. She said the house felt like it was no longer hers. I stared at him. It was never hers. You don't understand our history. I understand it perfectly. You were willing to erase me so she would feel comfortable. It was 3 photographs. No. It was my name on a contract. My files on her server. My work in her presentation. His face changed. That was the moment I knew he had hoped I would never discover it. Claire's firm has international relationships, he said carefully. Using her company gives the project credibility. And what do I get? You would have been my wife. The words left his mouth before he realized what they meant. Natalie inhaled sharply. Daniel looked down at his notes. I felt something inside me become calm. So that was the payment, I said. I give you my work. You give me your last name. That is not what I meant. It is exactly what you meant. He reached toward me. I stepped back. Evelyn, we can fix this. No. You can explain it? To whom? To your investors. His face lost color. At that exact moment, Daniel's phone vibrated. He read the message. Then he looked at me. The primary lender has suspended Monday's presentation pending proof of ownership. Adrian turned toward him. What? Daniel held up the phone. Harbor Crown is frozen. The rain beat against the lobby windows. Adrian looked at me as though I had become someone he did not recognize. Maybe I had. Or maybe, for the first time, I looked like myself. The Hawthorns responded the way powerful families often respond when someone says no. First, they tried money. Then they tried fear. Then they tried to rewrite the story. By Monday morning, a society website reported that I had suffered sudden emotional crisis and abandoned Adrian hours before the ceremony. The article described Claire as a close family friend who had comforted him through the humiliation. There was no mention of my designs. No mention of the contract. No mention of the photographs. A second article claimed I had used my relationship with Adrian to gain access to wealthy clients. By noon, 2 clients canceled meetings with my studio. By 3, one of my employees called crying because a reporter had contacted her parents. I wanted to disappear. Instead, I called my team. There were 4 of us, me, Jasmine, Peter, and Louise. I told them everything. I offered to pay 3 months of salary if they wanted to leave. No one did. Jasmine folded her arms. I watched you design Harbor Crown from a blank page. Peter nodded. I built the rendering model, Louise said. Claire visited once. She asked where the restroom was. For the first time in days, I laughed. Then Jasmine placed a hard drive on the table. I made backups every Friday. Every file includes creation dates, revision history, and user information. I stared at her. You kept all of it. You told us never to trust a single server. That backup changed the case. It showed more than the development of my design. It showed Adrian's involvement. His comments appeared throughout the files. Evelyn's atrium concept approved. Use Evelyn's updated circulation plan. Send Evelyn's renderings to Claire for formatting. He had documented my ownership repeatedly before trying to erase it. Daniel filed for an emergency injunction. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. But 2 nights before the hearing, Mr. Collins called me. The butler. His voice was low. Miss Mercer? I apologize for contacting you. How did you get my number? You provided it to the household office years ago. Is something wrong? I believe you should know that the security recordings from the service corridor are being reviewed. My hand tightened around the phone. What recordings? The area where you found the photographs. Did the cameras capture what happened? Les. Who broke the frame? He was silent. He was stern. Collins. Miss Beaumont stepped on it. I closed my eyes. Did Adrian see her? Les. What did he do? He told the staff to clean the area before morning. There was no misunderstanding. No accident he did not know about. He had watched Claire crush our photograph. Then he covered it up. Why are you telling me? When Mr. Collins took a slow breath. My daughter is an artist. Last year, her employer used her illustrations without credit. I advised her not to fight because the company was powerful. His voice became rough. I was wrong. Will you testify? Another silence, if required. Do you have access to the recording? It may be deleted soon. Do not steal anything, I said quickly. Do not put yourself at risk. Tell Daniel what exists and where it is stored. I understand. The next morning, Daniel sent a legal preservation notice demanding that all estate security footage be retained. The Hawthorns claimed the camera in that corridor had been malfunctioning. But they made one mistake. Their own security company kept automatic cloud backups for 30 days. A court order produced the video. It had no sound. It did not need sound. Claire appeared in the corridor carrying a glass of wine. She pointed at the photographs. Adrian entered behind her. A staff member removed the frames. Claire placed one on the floor and stepped on it. She laughed. Adrian looked down. Then he spoke to the staff member and walked away with her. I watched the clip only once. Not because it hurt too much, because it finally hurt less than I expected. The man on the screen was no longer my fiancé. He was evidence. The injunction hearing took place in a federal courthouse under a gray sky. Claire wore white. Adrian wore navy. Beatrice sat behind them. I wore the black suit I used for client presentations. Their attorney argued that my work had been commissioned. Daniel produced the consulting agreement. Their attorney argued that Claire's company had substantially transformed the designs. Jasmine's backups showed that 87% of the presentation materials came directly from my studio files. Then Daniel displayed an email Adrian had sent Claire 2 months earlier. Once Evelyn and I are married, she will not challenge the project. Keep the public materials under Beaumont Atelier until the financing closes. The courtroom became silent. I had not seen that email before. Adrian looked at me. I did not look away. The judge granted the injunction. Harbor Crown could not use, publish, present, sell, or modify my protected designs until ownership was resolved. The project stopped. Its investors withdrew from the scheduled funding round. The city postponed its review. Construction contracts worth millions were placed on hold. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. I had avoided the press until then. But Daniel said, "You do not have to let their version remain the only version." So I stepped toward the microphones. A reporter asked whether I canceled the wedding because of jealousy. No. I said, I canceled it because I discovered that the man I planned to marry was willing to erase both my place in his home and my name from my work. Another reporter asked whether I wanted revenge. I want authorship. I want payment. I want the truth stated in the same rooms where the lie was presented. That sentence appeared everywhere. Within 24 hours, the story changed. People stopped calling me an unstable bride. They started calling the case a major intellectual property dispute. Former Hawthorne employees contacted Daniel. One had seen Claire rehearsing my presentation. Another had been told to remove my studio logo from printed plans. A former assistant produced invoices showing that Beaumont Atelier had charged the Hawthorns $600,000 for original concept development. Claire had been paid for my work before the project even reached investors. Then the most surprising witness appeared. Adrian's younger sister, Sophie, came to my office after dark. She looked terrified. "I cannot stay long," she said. "What are you doing here?" She placed a folder on my desk. Inside were board meeting notes from Hawthorne Development. One paragraph stated, "Marriage expected to resolve designer compensation issue through internal family arrangement." I read it twice. They discussed our marriage as a business solution. Sophie nodded. "My father said paying you a large design fee would weaken Adrian's project returns. My mother said once you were married, you would not sue your own husband." Did Adrian hear this? He was in the meeting. Did he object? Sophie's eyes filled with tears. No. The final piece of me that had wanted to believe Adrian was merely weak disappeared. He had not drifted into betrayal. He had planned around my trust. "Why help me?" I asked. "Because they are arranging my engagement now." She gave a small, broken laugh. "And for the first time, I understand what they were doing to you." I copied the documents and told her to keep the originals with her lawyer. 3 weeks later, Hawthorne Development requested mediation. Their first offer was $2 million. I rejected it. Their second offer was $4 million and public credit as a consulting designer. I rejected that too. Adrian asked to meet me alone. I agreed only because the meeting took place in Daniel's office and was recorded with everyone's knowledge. He looked older. The confident control was gone. "My father may remove me from the company," he said. "That is between you and your father. Claire has returned to France. That is between you and Claire. My mother says I destroyed the family. That is between you and your mother." He leaned forward. "What is between you and me?" I thought about the answer. Then I said, "A cancelled wedding, a broken photograph, and a contract." His eyes reddened. "I did love you. Maybe. But you loved the version of me that gave you everything and asked for nothing. I thought after we were married, I could make it right." "No. You thought after we were married, I would be easier to control." He looked down. "I was afraid of losing the project. And you lost it?" "I was afraid of disappointing my family. And you became them." He flinched. For a moment, I felt sorry for him. Then I remembered the email. "Once Evelyn and I are married, she will not challenge the project." Pity did not require forgiveness. "What do you want?" he asked. "The full design fee, damages, public correction, removal of Claire's company from every document, and the right to decide whether Harbor Crown ever uses my design." "That will destroy my position." "No," I said. "Your decisions did that." The final settlement was signed 4 months after the cancelled wedding. The Hawthorne Development Group paid my studio the full value of the design contract, unpaid labor, licensing damages and legal costs. The total was $8.4 million. Claire's company returned the $600,000 it had billed for my work, and issued a public statement acknowledging that the central concept, spatial design, renderings, and presentation materials were created by Mercer Design Studio. Adrian resigned from Harbor Crown. His father removed him from the company's development committee. Beatrice never apologized. People like Beatrice rarely apologize because they believe consequences are something done to them, not something caused by them. The most important part of the settlement was not the money. It was control. The Hawthorns could continue Harbor Crown only if my studio led the design. At first, I planned to refuse. Then I visited the site. The old industrial land faced the harbor. Families lived in the neighborhood behind it. A public walkway had been promised for years but never built. If I walked away, the project might remain abandoned for another decade, so I agreed under new conditions. 30% of the ground floor space would be reserved for local businesses at protected rents. The harbor walkway would remain public. A job training program would hire from the surrounding neighborhoods. And Mercer Design Studio's name would appear on every official document. The Hawthorns accepted. They had no better option. My small studio expanded from 4 people to 23. Jasmine became operations director. Peter led visualization. Louise became senior project designer. Mr. Collins retired from the Hawthorne estate. I later hired his daughter to create a permanent art installation for the Harbor Crown atrium. She designed 3 suspended glass panels. Each one contained fine gold lines that looked like cracks. When sunlight passed through them, the cracks filled the floor with light. She called the installation, "What Survives." 6 months after the night I cancelled my wedding, we held the first public presentation for the redesigned project. More than 400 people attended. I stood on a stage beneath a large screen showing the harbor, the public walkway, and the glass atrium. My name appeared beneath the image. Not Adrian's, not Claire's, mine. Before I began, I looked toward the back of the room. Adrian stood near the doors. He had come alone. For a second our eyes met. There was no dramatic confrontation. No security guard removed him. No one laughed at him. That would have made the moment about him. It was not. I turned toward the audience and began my presentation. Afterward, Sophie found me near the stage. She had ended the engagement her parents arranged. She was applying to graduate school in California. "You did that?" she said. "No," I told her. "You did." She smiled. My sister Natalie joined us, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. She handed one to me. "To the wedding that never happened," she said. I looked around the atrium. My employees were laughing near the model. Local business owners were studying the plans. Mr. Collins stood beside his daughter's glass installation. Sunlight passed through the golden cracks and spread across the floor. "No," I said. "To the life that did." A year later, the first phase of Harbor Crown opened. The newspapers covered the public walkway, the local shops, and the glass atrium. One reporter asked whether the broken wedding photograph had inspired the gold-cracked installation. I told her the truth. It reminded me that broken things do not always need to be hidden. Sometimes the break is the place where the light finally enters. I never recovered the 3 frames from the Hawthorne estate. For a long time, I thought that bothered me. Then, on the anniversary of the cancelled wedding, a package arrived at my office. There was no return address. Inside was the smallest photograph. The glass had been removed. The shoeprint was gone. The picture itself was torn across the center, separating Adrian from me. A note from Mr. Collins rested beneath it. "I thought you should decide what happens to this." I held the photograph for several minutes. Then I took a pair of scissors. I did not destroy the whole thing. I cut away Adrian's half. On my side of the photograph, I was laughing. Not posing, not performing, laughing. I placed that half in a simple wooden frame and set it on my desk. People sometimes ask why I kept it. They assume it reminds me of betrayal. It does not. It reminds me of the woman I was before the Hawthorns convinced me that love required becoming smaller. It reminds me that I had a life before Adrian, and it reminds me that I built one after him. The night before my wedding, Adrian ordered our photographs thrown away because another woman did not like looking at them. He thought removing my image from his house would teach me where I belonged. Instead, it taught me where I did not. So I canceled the flowers, I canceled the music. I canceled the ballroom, the vows, and the future they had planned for me. But I did not cancel myself. And in the end, that was the one thing the Hawthorns could never afford to replace.